Sanhedrin Daf Yomi but Beis dignity in mourning v'lo hayu mit'ablim. Tragically, often we only appreciate something when we lose it. And sometimes it's important to simulate loss, to imagine what would this be like if I didn't have it, in order to be able to appreciate its value. We take our breathing for granted. Block your nose and hold your breath and see how long you can last, and realize what it would be if, God forbid, you lost your breath. Then we understand the value of breath. And so it is with everything, not only our things and other people. We take people for granted, and then when we lose them, we go into mourning. But what about when they're alive? How do we value them? And our own lives as well. We have to look at it this way. So we'll take a new look at understanding Avelus and the value of people, the value of oneself as well. Just to mention once again, next week, for most of the month of February, I'll be on vacation, and I'll try to put up a few each week during February. So we learned a daf before. Omar Rav Nachman, Omar Rabba Baravua, Amar Kra ve'avta l'recha kamocha beror lo mita yafa. We've talked about the fact that you have to be concerned about the pain of the execution and the indignity of the execution, and you have to try and minimize both. But there are two different opinions as to whether pain or dignity takes precedence. The one view is that indignity is so serious that a person would rather a more painful death, but a dignified one, than a death which is less painful but undignified. That's the power of dignity. So that's the way a person experiences dignity and indignity in their lifetime. But in our Gemara today, we see something astonishing. That in the case of criminals who executed, lo hayu mit'ablin, people didn't sit shiva for them. There wasn't a period of avelus. Welcome back, Joey. Good to see you back. Aval, we're dealing with avelus. You weren't here because you were involved with avelus, right? Aval oinenin, but we do aninut. So aninut is before the burial. The person, the close relative, is in a state of aninut, and there are certain halachot that apply, but it's not avelut. It's not a state of mourning. It's a state of being in suspense between the life of the person who's passed away and when mourning can kick in. She'ein aninut ela belev, because there's nothing you do for aninut. There are no activities. When a person is an onen immediately after the loss of a close relative, they're an onen, there's nothing to do. On the contrary, aninut is about what you don't do. You don't do mitzvot, you don't say kriyat. There are things that you don't do, but there's nothing to do. That's what aninut is. It's a period of nothing to do. Whereas avelut, there's a lot to do. There are a whole lot of halachot of avelut that one has to observe. So what's the difference? Why we do keep aninut for somebody who's executed, but we don't keep avelut? Explains Rashi. And in this Rashi, there are two amazing insights in this short Rashi. V'lo hayu mit'ablim alehen, kedei shetehei bizyonan kapara lahen. You don't do avelut so that the indignity they suffer assists the process of atonement. So we know that part of kapara is through hardship, through challenge, through difficulty, through discomfort, through pain. Because we're better people. When we're suffering discomfort, we're better people than we are when we're comfortable, generally. We're more reflective, we're more careful, we make decisions about our lives that are more responsible. It's just part of the tragedy of human existence, that when we're uncomfortable, we initiate change. When we're comfortable, we stay as we are. And part of the change that has to come about with somebody who's done wrong is kapara. There has to be atonement. And sometimes for kapara, you need discomfort. And in the case of the execution of somebody who's committed a serious capital offense, the discomfort of the execution is part of his kapara, it's part of his atonement. And part of that discomfort is the discomfort of indignity. So what we see in this Rashi is that not mourning is an indignity. It's not just that mourning is a koved hames. It is that too. If you mourn for a dead person, that's showing honor to the dead person. So you'll say, and what if it happens if you don't mourn for the dead person? Then you're not showing honor for the dead person. No, says Rashi, if you don't mourn for the dead person, it's a bizayon. It's an indignity for the dead person. So that's the first thing we learn, that not mourning, that avelut is avoiding the indignity of no avelut, because no avelut is an indignity for the dead person. And the second thing we learn is the person's dead already. On Daf Mem Hey, we learned about indignity in the act of dying, but you're still alive, so you can feel dignity or indignity. But here we're talking 7 days after the person's dead already. What dignity or indignity does the person feel if there's avelut or there isn't avelut? So we learn from here that indignity is something that's experienced by the neshama. It's not a discomfort experienced by the body. The person feels physical pain, that's the body. After death, there's no physical pain. But when a person feels indignity, that's the soul that is assaulted. When you act with indignity to somebody, you're assaulting their soul, not their body. And that applies after death as well. The neshama is still there. So the neshama can still feel indignity, just as the neshama can still feel kavod. Kavod, honor, is also something that the soul feels. Kavod is not only something that the body feels. Kavod is something that honor and dignity is something that is felt to the soul. That's why we say that many of the Gedolei Yisrael, including Tanoim and Amoraim, were worried that the honor they received during their lifetime could take off merit Olam haba, in the world to come, because they've been rewarded already with honor, because honor is a spiritual reward, it's not a physical reward. Honor uplifts the soul, and indignity damages, it assaults the neshama. We want there to be bizayon. In the case of somebody who's been executed for a crime, we want his soul to suffer the pain of indignity so as to assist in the process of kapara. And if we would mourn for him, the soul wouldn't feel that indignity and the kapara would not be complete. But for aninut, we don't worry, because in aninut there's nothing externally expressed. This Rashi is amazing because of these two principles we learn. That bizayon, indignity, is a spiritual assault, not a physical assault, and that mourning is the removal of the indignity of not mourning. So what's the indignity of not mourning? So there wasn't avelus. Let's say a person didn't leave relatives behind. Person died and didn't have close relatives. Can happen, it does happen. Why would it be indignity to that person because there's no shiva, because there's no mourning? So we understand that from a Gemara in Shabbos and a Rambam. Omer Rav Chisda, nafsho shel adam mit'abelet alav kol shiva. An amazing comment of Rav Chisda, that the neshama is in mourning during the shiva. So once again we see the neshama is still active, and the neshama is in mourning. What's the neshama mourning for? It's mourning for the loss of the body. Because while there was a live body, the person could do mitzvot, the person could do tshuva, the person could learn Torah, the person could give tzedakah. All of those things were there, and the neshama is in mourning. It's lost its body. It's lost its capacity to be active. It's lost its capacity to make a contribution. So the neshama is in mourning. And so on, the Gemara proves it. Omer Rav Yehuda, meit she'ein lo menachamim. So what happens if somebody dies without menachamim? Here again, you see, it seems to be saying, what is the role of the comforters? Menachamim, the people who come to the shiva house and they visit. Who are they comforting? Normally we would think they're comforting the mourners. But Rav Yehuda says, meit she'ein lo menachamim. There's nobody to comfort the mace. There's nobody to comfort this neshama that's in mourning. What do? We bring a minyan of people, and they sit shiva. This minyan of people who are not related sit shiva for the dead person, because they're there to comfort the dead person. That's part of what it is. There was a person, the Gemara says, that died in Rav Yehuda's neighborhood, and every day he gathered 10 people and stayed there, and after 7 days, he had a dream, and the dead person appeared to Rav Yehuda and said, Tanuach da'atcha she'enachta et da'ati, you can relax because you enabled me to relax. Once again, we see that the neshama is active even after the death. The Rambam says something so interesting, and I became aware of this Rambam and the peculiarity of the Rambam and the way to resolve the Rambam through a fascinating lecture that Professor Moshe Halbertal gave 10 years ago at UC Berkeley. And I've mentioned him before. He's a professor of law and Jewish thought both in Jerusalem and in New York, and a Talmud Chacham, an amazing Talmud Chacham as well. And he, in that lecture, he speaks about this Rambam. And he notices, look what the Rambam says. Meit she'ein lo avilim lehit nachem. What is the problem, says the Rambam? There are no mourners. Lehit nachem is the reflexive, it's the hitpa'el. There are no mourners to be comforted. That's the problem. So what do? So it's not quite like the Gemara seems to be saying. The Gemara says there are no mourners to comfort the dead body, the dead person. The Rambam says, no, we're not worried about comforting the dead person. We're worried about comforting living human beings. There's no Shiva house, so nobody can come to be Menachem Ovel. But there are no Avelim. Who cares? Thank goodness. Maybe it's a good thing. There are no mourners. So there's no need for Nichum Avelim. You don't have to go and comfort anybody. No, says the Rambam, that's a problem. שאין לו אבלים להתנחם, באים 10 בני אדם כשרים ויושבים במקומו כל 7 ימי האבילות. You bring 10 people, ksherim, to sit in his place for the Shiva. ושאר העם מתקבצים עליהם. And then other people come and they're Menachem Ovel, these 10 people who might be strangers, they might not even have known the person who passed away. An anonymous person passes away, nobody even knows who the person was. And there are no Avelim, so we gather 10 people, we simulate Avelim, and we simulate Avelut, and then the town comes and they're Menachem Ovel for these 10 simulators. It's almost like artificial intelligence. They're not real. They're not real Avelim. They're acting out like Avelim. Why? What is that for? Says the Ravid, Ze'en lo shoresh. Where does the Rambam get this from? And everybody asks, the Mishnah and others, what do you mean, where does the Rambam get it from? He gets it from the Gemara in Shabbos that we've just learned. But no, the Gemara in Shabbos doesn't say lehit nachem. The Lechem Mishnah points out, Ma shekatav Rabbeinu she'asara na'asim ka'avelim v'sha'ar ha'am menachemim lahem kasher minayim lo zeh. This idea that you simulate 10 people as Avelim, they act out the Avelut, and then the town comes and they menachem these actors. Why would that be? What is that for? Where does that come from? And that's what the Ravid means when he says, what's the source of this? And the Meiri explains it, and the Meiri says, the Rambam explains this Gemara. He's explaining this din that we were told by Rav Yehuda, Meit she'ein lo menachemim holchim 10 bnei adam v'yoshvim bimkomo, says the Meiri, she'ein lo avilim shiyu tzrichim lenachamam. The tragedy is that there are no mourners who need comforting. That's the tragedy. A man dies and nobody's crying. Nobody feels loss. It hasn't made a difference. The man was alive, the man was dead. It's made no difference. That's a bizoya. That's how Professor Halbertal explains the Rambam. That's a bizoyan. Because mourning, the purpose of mourning is to express a sense of isolation. That means I feel a terrible loss. I've lost this precious person in my life. I've lost this connection. I'm suffering enormous loss. And the world carries on as normal. I can't relate to a world that doesn't recognize the loss of my parent, of my brother or sister, whatever the case may be. I can't relate to a world that doesn't feel the sense of loss that I feel. That's a covet for the mace. And then the Nichum Avelim is an attempt to bring the person back, gently back into society, to reconnect the person with society. But the period of Avilut is a period of disconnect. It's a period of terrible loss. And what a tragedy it is, says the Rambam, Mi she'ein lo avilim lehitnachem. Nobody's sitting at home and say, please come and comfort me. I'm so sad. Nobody's sad. It's okay. He's died and nobody's sad. What a tragedy it is. That's a bizoyan. And that's what Rashi means when he says, Kedei shetehei bizyonan kapara lahem. You don't do Avelut because Avelut resolves the indignity of dying without leaving sadness and loss. And through not having Avelut, the person is dying and there's no feeling of sadness and loss. That's a bizayon for the person who died, and it helps the neshama recover. It helps the neshama go through a period of kapara. And we learn from this the importance of missing and being missed. To say to somebody, I missed you. If I say to one of you, I missed you in the shir yesterday, I'm not criticizing, I'm not judging you. I know that there's a reason, there's some reason why you weren't at the shir. If I say I missed you, that's an incredible compliment. That means I know it wasn't the same. You were missed. That's what I mean when I say I missed you. You weren't in the shir. You're normally in the shir, and that shir is different when you're not there. The shir is different. Once Simon, gave me some musar about when if I leave davening early, it makes a difference. You can feel it if I leave the davening. So that's a compliment. I didn't take that as a judgment. I took that as a compliment. Wow, who would even notice if I step out of the door? And Simon says, no, he notices. To be noticed when you're not there. To be noticed when you're there, that's covered. That's relative. It's like the difference between v'ahavta re'echa kamocha and ma'adesani lach. To notice when a person's there is the positive. That's relatively easy. But to notice when somebody isn't there and feel the loss, feel the gap. So that's the first thing, is to be able to notice these things and to communicate to people. I missed you. To communicate to your wife if she's out for a while, or she's traveling, for a wife to communicate to her husband. I missed you. To a child, from a child to a parent. It's an incredible compliment. I missed you. And the second thing that's important is we need to make sure that we're missed. We need to make sure that, firstly, after 120 years when our time is up, we're not in a situation where nobody even notices. Life goes on exactly the same and it doesn't make a difference. Nobody's terribly upset. It's okay. It was there, it's not there. It doesn't make a big difference. We've got to make sure that we're missed, and not for the sake of being missed, not in the pursuit of kavod, just to make sure we're making a difference. It's something the neshama needs. The neshama needs to know. That's why it's come here. It came here. It would be better for the neshamas, the Gemara says, not to have been created in the first place, not to have come to this world. It came to this world to make a difference. That's why the neshama comforts itself and says, okay, this is not the place I like to be, but it's a place where I'm making a difference. So good, I'm okay to spend 70, 80, 90 years down on this earth making a difference. But if I'm not making a difference, what is it? If the neshama then doesn't mourn the loss of the body, because the body wasn't doing anything, it was lying on the beach, it was in retirement. If a person's in retirement and making no contribution to society at all, no chesed, no tzedakah, no teaching, no learning, what's it doing here? And then when the time comes and the body dies, then the neshama says, it wasn't really doing anything while it was alive either, so it doesn't make much of a difference. So we need to make sure that we are making a difference, and that if we're making a difference, our absence will be lost. But it's important to notice that not only with one's life, but to notice that in every situation. You need to check in with yourself constantly. Am I making a difference to my family? Am I making a difference to my spouse? Am I making a difference in the shir? Does it make any difference if I'm there or I'm not there? Am I making a difference in the davening? If I'm at the minyan or I'm not at the minyan, does it make any difference? If I'm in shul on Shabbos, does it make any difference or doesn't it? You need to check in with ourselves, because it's the biggest indignity to feel it doesn't make a difference if I'm there or not. It's terribly important that we understand the difference we make. Each one of us brings an energy. Each one of us brings a certain atmosphere. Each one of us, and anybody who's given a shir understands, we've talked about this before, how each person in the shir elicits a certain response from the person teaching. And when that person's not there, the response is different. Each person pulls a certain part out of the person who's teaching. And so it is with chesed and with tzedakah. The receiver plays a big part in eliciting giving from the giver. And when the receiver isn't there, the giving is not the same. So we need to make sure that whether we're in the receiving role or we're in the giving role, that we're making a difference. When Rabbi Lapin used to discourage people from buying life insurance, and I'm not getting into the halachic question of whether one should or one shouldn't, but he used to discourage people, and he used to say, it's possible that the only thing you're really doing for your family is supporting them. But if you take out life insurance, that your family will do better from your death than from your life, what's the Rebbeinu Shalom going to have? What incentive does the Rebbeinu Shalom have to keep you alive? Your family is better off with you dead. At least as long as you're alive, you're making a difference. And the Rebbeinu Shalom preserves you for the difference that you make. And so it is in all the areas of our interaction, not just from a financial perspective. The more of a difference we make in all the engagements and interactions we have, the more bracha there is, the more the Rebbeinu Shalom protects us and preserves us so that we can continue to make that. The more dignity there is, the more kavod there is, and the more value there is in our lives.